Okay, why don't we begin? Welcome to the midterm briefings. Uh, and we today what we'll be focusing on is the nature of the problem in each of our pieces of legislation and the science of the problem, and also focusing on the legislation itself. And these are really a set of progress reports. In our sections, we've been briefing each other. Now we get to brief the entire class. Stephanie, why don't you explain the rules for today and how we're going to proceed?
Sure. So the presenters will be able to share their video and obviously talk. And then after they're done, we'll get 3 questions per presentation. And you can ask those questions either through the Q&A box at the bottom, or you can raise your hand and I will unmute you.
Okay, so we're going to start with the briefing on Water Power Research and Development Act that Rachel will be delivering, and that's the group that is advised by Professor Howard Abson. So Rachel, take it away. She's still muted.
Hello, everyone. I was muted. Happy Wednesday. My name is Rachel Goodgal. I am here for Potential Power Team, and I will be discussing today the Water Power Research and Development Act. Before I begin, I'd like to thank my team members on this task, Catherine Lynn and Jessica Kenny, as well as our manager of the team, Liz Wilson, our deputy manager, Colleen Neely, and our esteemed advisor, Professor Abson. Today, we'll start by talking about the bill. What is it trying to solve? We'll get into the science of the problem, discuss barriers to alternative energies, and finally touch on the government action needed. The Water Power Research and Development provides for a program of research, development, demonstration, and commercial application in 2 related sectors, hydropower and marine energy technology. We'll start with hydropower because it's something that most of us know about. It's one of the oldest forms of electricity production and currently provides about 7% of US electricity. At hydropower plants, water turns a turbine to spin a generator and produce electricity. As I mentioned, it's a pretty old and well-established form of energy. The Grand Coulee Dam, shown here, was built all the way back in the 1930s. And our hydro capacity hasn't increased very much since the 1970s. So our bill allocates funding and creates programs to improve hydropower. Notably, it seeks to increase power generation by improving efficiency and by developing better components and plant systems. It aims to reduce the environmental impacts of new and existing hydro plants and to increase reliability, including in the face of extreme weather events. The bill also focuses on, and in fact directs the majority of its appropriations to programs for marine energy. Marine energy is comprised of several different technologies, most of which are new and are much less developed than conventional hydropower. Marine energy includes energy that comes from waves, tides, and currents in oceans, from free-flowing water in rivers and many other bodies of water, from salinity and pressure gradients, and from water temperature differentials, including ocean thermal energy. The photo here on your right shows a turbine system that can capture energy from free-flowing water and can be used in both rivers and tidal settings. Goals of the bill with regards to marine energy are assisting with technological development and testing to demonstrate readiness of new energy options, addressing resource variability, including by investigating storage options and advancing integration into the grid, and identifying and reducing environmental impacts of these technologies. So what's the problem? Why do we need this bill? Well, as you can see, renewable energy, which includes hydropower, makes up only about 17% of our electricity mix. On the other hand, fossil fuels, specifically coal and natural gas, are the sources for well over 60% of the electricity generated in the United States. Both of these fuels contribute to global climate change when combusted. They also cause a variety of environmental damages that happen from extraction to electricity generation. First, let's talk about coal. Coal is very abundant in the United States, and it's been a major energy source since way back in the 1880s. Unfortunately, coal extraction and combustion both create a host of problems. Mining drastically alters local landscapes, and wastewater discharges acidic residue and heavy metals into nearby waterways. This picture shows a stream near a mine near Pittsburgh, which is polluted with waste. Both mining and combustion also release a variety of air pollutants, including particulate matter, which is linked to lung disease in humans. The sulfur dioxides and nitrogen oxides produced when coal is combusted also contribute to respiratory illnesses, and when they mix with water vapor, they cause acid rain, which damages both ecosystems and human infrastructure. And of course, coal combustion produces a huge amount of carbon dioxide, which contributes to the climate crisis. Natural gas is the largest single source of electricity in the United States, and its increasing share over the last 20 years can be attributed to hydraulic fracturing or fracking. Fracking involves drilling deep into the shale layer, turning horizontally, and pumping in large quantities of liquid at high pressure to fracture the shale and release natural gas. Each fracking operation uses an average of 4 million gallons of water, and the wastewater has many pollutants in it, including methane, radionuclides, and trace amounts of arsenic, bromine, and heavy metals. One of the nation's largest fracking resources is the Marcellus Shale, which spans New York, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. Here we show a map of all the fracking wells in Pennsylvania. We've circled Susquehanna County, which has a high concentration of fracking wells, including in the town of Dimock, Pennsylvania. Cabot Oil and Gas began fracking in Dimock in 2008, and soon afterwards, residents started reporting problems with their drinking water. Here, a resident holds up tap water that he says was contaminated by fracking. 15 families sued Cabot, and a settlement was reached in 2017, but environmental violations from wells continued to be cited even after that. And just last week, Pennsylvania's Attorney General charged Cabot for environmental crimes related to fracking. The full extent of health risks caused by fracking leaks and wastewater is not yet certain, but Dimock certainly offers a cautionary tale. Natural gas is often billed as a cleaner fossil fuel because it releases less carbon dioxide and health-harming air pollution than coal when it's combusted. However, its global warming potential may well be undercounted because there is significant methane leakage that happens from extraction to combustion. So coal and natural gas sound pretty bad, right? Why are we still using them? We already have many forms of renewable energy technology, and we primarily use so far wind, solar, and hydro. However, there are barriers to increasing renewable energy generation. Many renewable technologies, such as wind and solar, must contend with variations in nature's abundant energy. Some forms of water power, like conventional hydro, have similar challenges of variability, but others, like tidal power, are much more predictable. In addition, increasing the mixture of variable sources would together provide a steadier supply of electricity. Another challenge is that renewable sources may be located in rural areas that lack effective transmission. There are also permitting barriers that delay construction. And, of course, there are stakeholders on all sides of the issue, some of whom are committed to maintaining fossil fuel dependence and slowing adoption of renewables. Government action is needed to overcome these obstacles. Our bill makes a large investment in marine energies and hydropower in order to spur innovation and overcome technical challenges. It also seeks to reduce barriers to market entry by both improving cost competitiveness and commercial readiness of water power, and by improving the licensing process. Currently, it's not uncommon for licensing to take up to a decade, and there are 300 hydro plants that are due for relicensing in the next 10 years. Such delays would be a huge hindrance to increased capacity. As mentioned earlier, the bill also aims to address and reduce the environmental impacts of hydro and marine energy systems. In conclusion, US electricity generation is largely powered by fossil fuels. Water power is an important source to fill out the renewable energy mix, and government action is needed to overcome barriers. Next week, we will hear more about how our bill proposes water power as a solution to the problem of fossil fuel electricity. Sophie Tolomazenko will detail capacity, availability, and resilience of hydropower and marine energy technologies and discuss the implementation strategies in the bill. Thank you very much for your attention, and I would be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Rachel. And Stephanie, if you want to entertain some questions.
Sure, that'd be great. You guys can raise your hand. Looks like we have one. Alyssa Ramirez, you can talk.
Sure, great presentation. You guys had mentioned improving the efficiency of hydropower and dams. Does the bill approach existing hydropower or just new technologies?
Thanks, Alyssa. That's a great question. So the bill is very specific to include both new and existing water power tech. As mentioned, the marine power is more new, but in the hydropower section, they talk a lot about both improving existing infrastructure and creating better new infrastructure. Specifically for older hydro plants, the bill focuses on improving technology for non-powered aging dams and using analytics and computing power to help extend the operational life and improve the environmental impacts of some of those older dams.
Great, we have another question from Jenny.
Hi, I was wondering, and I apologize if you went into this, I missed the first couple of minutes, but can you elaborate on the ecological impacts of hydropower, affecting the local ecosystem and waterways, and if there's a focus in this bill on like big hydro versus kind of more smaller scale, because there are a lot of examples of big hydro like causing a lot of ecological damage.
Yeah, absolutely. I did not really go into the environmental impacts of big hydro, and we're going to talk about that later on. But as you mentioned, there are a lot of negative environmental impacts on fish migration, on sediment patterns, on just the ecosystems around, especially large hydro plants. And what the bill does do is point out certain areas that it wants to look into for improving those environmental impacts. It lists specifically fisheries, aquatic life, navigation of waterways, and both upstream and downstream environmental conditions. Oh, and sorry, you also asked about small hydro, and the bill that is one of the focuses for new technologies, is looking to develop more and better tech for free-flowing hydropower systems.
Awesome. We have one more question from Russ.
Yeah, I think this probably follows up on the previous question asked, and I don't know if you've come across these options yet, because I was really excited to hear about the title, Energy New Technologies. And I think this probably follows along with the idea of moving away from big hydro, especially in communities or areas further inland or that are landlocked. But I was just curious to know if you have started coming across any kinds of newer tech that could be put into rivers for communities that are far away from the ocean.
That's a great question. And again, I think you'll hear more about that from Sophie in the following week. But what I can speak to from the bill is that in marine energy, one of the definitions of marine energy is any energy that comes from free flowing water, whether that be rivers, tides, even lakes. You can do some of these marine energy technologies in lakes if they have some kind of tidal pattern. So I think that's really exciting because it's another way to generate electricity that often is more predictable when we have these tides. Rivers a little bit different because we do have the same issue with precipitation patterns, but especially tides are a lot more predictable. And you asked about inland, I'm recalling, so that ocean tides are not so relevant to your question. But I think the discussion of any kind of free-flowing water, rivers, lakes, all of those things are going to be explored in the bill, and we'll have more for you in a few weeks.
Sounds great. So thank you for a terrific presentation, great questions. We're going to take a brief break, maybe about 3 minutes. It's now 10:15, and we will reach